The Transformers. A long, long time ago, the mountain rose up and rumbled and grumbled and stretched higher and higher to the sky. It looked down and saw the beautiful green meadows of the Pemberton Valley. The mountain also saw the Transformers making their way through the territory. This is one of the Transformer stories.
Hi, my name is Lorraine, and today I'll be talking about the Transformers. The little people believed that the Transformers were three siblings who set off on a journey away from their parents. During their journey, they met up with special animals who helped them identify issues that needed sorting so that future people had guidelines to direct their lives. On their travels, they met Mink. They tried to transform Mink into a rock, but he was too strong, and instead he joined the siblings on their journey. When they reached Horizon Lake, they turned their sisters into a canoe so they could travel down the lake to the Lillooet River. Mink steered the canoe. They saw an old man sitting by the river trying to fish with a crude net. He took the slime off the fish that rubbed against his net, and this is what he lived on. One of the Transformers pulled off a hair of his leg and made it into twine. Then he wove the twine into dip net, chanting, "Stola, sola, sola, stretch, stretch, stretch," as he worked. He told Stoop to try to catch a fish with the net. Almost immediately, a fish was in the net. "Well, that is the way to do some fishing," said the Transformer. "You can catch fish anytime now."
The Lillooet have always lived in the valley and named the mountain Tazel, which means slides on the mountain. On the western ridge, the Transformers transformed 2 hunters up there that can be seen today. The Gold Rushers on the Move, 1858. Later on, the mountain looked down on the beautiful green valley, and it was quiet and peaceful. But then the mountain saw many men and boats coming up the lake from the Fraser River. They had pickaxes, shovels, and gold pans, bacon, beans, and flour in their backpacks. They had horses, mules, and camels to carry all their things. There were 30,000 people of all kinds that were coming through the valley, making their way to Lillooet, which is where the gold had been found. Gold fever sent them through, but some decided to stay. This is the Gold Rush story.
My name is Holly, and I'll be reading The Gold Rusher. I've traveled many miles from home, prospecting and digging for gold. I've tunneled, dug, and panned, and I've often been cold. For each man who got rich by mining, many more grew poor. I made up my mind to try farming, the only pursuit that was sure. So I rolled my grub in my blanket, I grabbed up the tools and a gun. I started one morning to hike it to the country they call Pemberton. Arriving Flat Brook in the summer, I found it hidden in the fog and covered all over with timber, thick as hair on the back of a dog. When I looked on the prospects that illumined me, tears trickled over my face, and I thought that my travels had brought me to a very tough place. I stacked me a claim in the forest and sat myself down to hard toil. For 2 years I chopped and I cleared, and I saw the rich dark soil. I tried to stay out of the country, but poverty forced me to stay until I became an old settler, and nothing could drag me away. No longer the slave of ambition, I left the world in its schmoes, as I think of the pleasant condition surrounded by acres of potatoes.
The railway arrives, 1890-1914. The mountain was woken up one morning by the big noises of men and machines and horses. The railway was coming. The mountain saw the Lillooet chief, James Stager, travel to meet with 13 other chiefs to sign the declaration of the Lillooet tribe because they were worried about all the changes to the valley. They sent a letter to the Queen, but she didn't write back, so they waited and welcomed the new people as best they could. The mountain heard the toot-toot of a whistle in October of 1914. Soon, many more people came to live in the beautiful Green Valley. This is the Railway Story.
Hi, my name is Grace, and I am doing a poem about the railway rise, a poem that was written about the first train. Up in that far north country where the skies are always blue, they're waiting for a happy day when the PGE goes through. Oh, the salmon will be swishing, the moose will start to move. Here's the grizzly bears will grizzle when the PGE goes through. Oh my, I know the toil will end when I hear the whistle coming back round the bend.
First schools, 1915, 1930. After the railway came, the mountain looked down and saw the new settlers were planting crops. There were new animals called cows, chickens, and pigs, and soon they had little calves, chicks, and piglets. The new settlers also had new babies, and soon these children needed a school to go to. The farmers built a school in the Pemberton Meadows in 1915. In Birken, a school was built in 1922. In the new town called Pemberton Station, a school was built in 1929. This is a story about the first schools.
Hi, my name is Naomi, and I'm going to tell you a story about the first schools. This is like the first time we were in schools. There was a telegram when you first entered in a place to put your shoes. There were big windows to let the light in because there were no electric lights. There was small wood stoves to heat room, and sometimes children heated up their lunch on the stove. There was a big chalkboard and a few books. There was a wash basin and a bench for washing up after recess. And one of the kids would go to the creek to get a pail of water. There were big kids and little kids, so there were big desks and little desks. There was one big desk at the front of the room with a teacher. All the desks had equals, and you had to dip your pen into the ink to write on with it. There weren't any pens or pencils. All the children sat together in the same room. The teacher taught everyone together, and sometimes the big kids helped the little kids with their schoolwork. Sometimes children often went outside together after school as they made their way home to do chores on the farm.
The Potato Story, 1930-1960. The mountain noticed the new settlers planting new crops and grasses and flowers. There was one crop in particular that they all seemed to plant. It had white flowers in the spring, and the people dug them up for their roots in the fall. The Lilwat people were familiar with this plant too, and had planted it here even before the gold rush started. The crop did really well in the sandy soils of the valleys. Soon the farmers got together and formed the Farmers Institute in 1925. They started to market their crops to the people in Vancouver and other cities. They attended and won prizes at farming fairs in Chicago and Toronto. The potato is king in Pemberton. Early growers were Decker, Arne, Blakeway, and Cooper, Green, Ronan, Wellington, and Kay. They grew Snowflake, White Rose, Netted Gems, Epicure, Early Rose, and Green Mountain seed potatoes. The potato crop has been and continues to be a most important crop in Pemberton. This is the Potato Story.
Hi, my name is Jasmine, and I'm going to read the potato story. We love potatoes chopped up into chunky chips. We love spicy food which is served up with toast. We love potatoes sliced which have been fried in a pan. Fried potatoes, we are the world's biggest fan. We love potatoes which have been pummeled and bashed with butter and milk to make a real light fluffy nose. Baked potatoes we find a bit dry, but with a nice filling such as chili, to give them a try. We are the most filling with breakfast. We love hash browns or potato cakes, and we love potatoes mixed up with leeks in a bake. Crispy golden potatoes served up with Sunday roast. Among the kinds of potatoes which we love the most.
Hydro and phone arrive 1940-1980. The mountain looked out upon the land and noticed the Lil'wat children traveling away to school. This is when Lil'wat children were taken away to go to residential schools, far away from the beautiful valley. The mountain also noticed tall metal towers being built through the valley and long wires being strung between them. This story is about when the hydro and phone came to Pemberton.
Hydro and phone arrived. Oil lamps were used. You had to fill the lamps with oil every day. The oil lamps were kind of smoky and dim too. Before the hydro and phone came, we had to run to the neighbors with a message from our house and then run back again with the answer. And sometimes had to do this many times. Before the hydro came, we had to help with a lot of washing and bringing pails of water to the house because there was no electric pump for the water. Before the phone came, if there was an accident or an emergency, people didn't know right away and it was hard to get help. Before the hydro and phone came, Pemberton was small and dark and quiet.
Floods 1940-1980. The mountain, every fall and spring, loved to see the sun shine down and melt the snow. The water ran down the mountain faster and faster and filled the rivers in the valley below. Sometimes the clouds would get dark and it would rain too, and then the rivers spilled over the banks. The Lil'wat people knew all about floods and told many stories about floods happening throughout time. The farmers didn't like the flooding, especially when it happened in the fall, because all the potatoes and other crops got wet. Sometimes the floods were so bad the people didn't have enough food for winter, or their house was wrecked and they had to leave Pemberton. The farmers decided the rivers needed better banks and started to pile up rocks on the banks. The mountain noticed all of the digging and diking going on in the valley and saw the digging down along the lakes too. Soon the riverbanks were all built up. Some of the crooked rivers were straightened and the lakes drained faster than they did before. This helped to slow the flooding, but it still happens from time to time when the mountain melts quickly and it rains for many days. This is the story of floods and farms.
Hi, my name is Natalie. Today I'm going to be reading Floods and Farms, 1940 to 1980. It was a dark and stormy night in 1940. It was when the rain came down. The rain and rained and rained some more. And soon the farms were going underwater. The horses and cows and chickens had tried to climb up on things. Fences floated away with a few wagon wheels and bicycles. It was the big flood of Highway 99. The farmers wanted to see improvements made on the farm land so that the flood would stop. They wrote to the government to ask for some money. The big dikes to bring the water. The government said okay and sent the money. In 1984, there was a really big flood too, and the flood was old high school. The water came up in the windows to the government provided some money, but the people also had to come up with some themselves. It was tough to come up with the money sometimes. In 2003, there was a really big flood on the bridges of Highway 99 washed out. Pemberton Golf Course and Airport was mostly underwater, along with many houses in Mount Curran. The government helped rebuild the roads and bridges. That was the last time there was a big flood.
Highway 99, 1960 to 2000. The mountain saw men and machines pushing a ribbon of road northward from Squamish. The new road mostly followed the railway, but there were a few detours. The new road meant improved living conditions for everyone in Pemberton and district. There weren't any passing lanes or even pavement in the early years, but people were still happy to have a road to drive on. This is the story of Highway 99.
The first road was a trade road that the Lillooet people used to trade with their neighbors in Squamish. When the new settlers started coming through, they used this trail to get up through the mountains to Pemberton. They used horses to carry their belongings and walked with their horses. When the railroad came, it used the same trail through the mountains. When the hydro came, the men built roads to get to the hydro towers along the way to Squamish. Eventually, this hydro road was improved and became Highway 99. One of the first people to drive was driving a large truck, and so the wheels were hanging off the road on sharp corners. This first driver said the road was a little scary in places.
Today, the mountain looked down on the beautiful green valley below. It had seen the transformers come through a long time ago and how they made the land for the Lillooet people. Then the mountain saw men moving north for the gold rush. Then it saw men and machines come through and build a railroad. It saw new farms and schools and many crops of potatoes. The mountain saw the hydro towers get built and the phone come. It saw the floods and the farms and all the changes, but thought it still was a beautiful green valley. This is the story of Pemberton today.
Hi, my name is Jaden. What I like best about living in Pemberton is kayaking at 1 Mile Lake.
Hi, my name is Hope and this is Manny.
We are reading an original story. It's about an elderly lady and some transformers. Once upon a time,
There was a little old lady.
she decided to take her dog for a walk.
She saw a fire.
She thought it was filling the forest down.
It belonged to some transformers.
She asked the transformers if she could boil the fire.
To keep warm
The transformers got really mad.
and turn the little old lady to stone.
But